Good morning and Merry Christmas to each of you. I wanted to read something to you here regarding Shakespeare and Christmas and the end of the year. Once more into the breach. Once more into the breach means to charge into difficult or dangerous situations again and again and again, to keep fighting or working despite the setbacks, or to return to a challenging task with a renewed effort. Originating from Shakespeare's Henry V, where the king rallies his troops to attack a small gap in a city wall. It's a call to courageously re-engage with an arduous, listen to that word, arduous, undertaking, whether a literal battle or a metaphorical battle like office work or housework chores, personal responsibility, urging people to get back to it. Modern usage metaphorically used to encourage someone like you and I to face ongoing problems, tough meetings, or daunting tasks with renewed vigor. You're coming into the end of the year. I'm coming into the end of the year. We're all coming into the end of the year. Most importantly, you need to finish this year out. Remember, there's a finish line here. December 31st, midnight. There's a finish line. Finish the year strong. And if for some reason you feel like this year has gone badly for you, whether it be financially, emotionally, or spiritually, or all of the above, there's no reason why you can't get a pen and paper out today, a pencil and paper out today. I like to do it physically as opposed to on a computer or on my smartphone, and write down those things that are important to you and start to put together those as goals for the first of the year, for your New Year's resolution. Remember, I've got an important website that could help you out called 7keys2success.com. And without these 7 keys, you can't enter the kingdom of success. You can't. Now, these are not my keys. These are just keys I got after having read a little over 900 biographies. 1, you got to set a goal. You got to set a goal or set goals. 2, you got to make a plan for that goal or those goals, plural. 3, you got to ask yourself a question. Do you genuinely believe in the plan that you've put in place for these goals or that goal? And then number 4, you need to put the plan in action. And number 5, one of the most important aspects of these 7 keys to success is don't deviate from the plan. But hold on, because there is a number 6 that says, if and when you deviate, because we all do. We all do. We're human. Don't get angry with yourself. Don't flog yourself. Don't beat yourself. Don't whip yourself. No need to even worry about forgiving yourself. Just put your plan back in action where you're at that time. And last but not least, take the time to relish in and enjoy accomplishing your goals, to feel a sense of fulfillment. I've gone on to write in here on my website, 7keys2success.com. When you watch a tribe after having a successful day of hunting, they always have a ritualistic dance around a fire, a large fire, as a sign of enjoyment and appreciation for having accomplished their goals. So have your dance. This is that time of year, but some of you may be saying to yourself, today on Christmas morning, Christmas Day, last night on Christmas Eve, I wish I could have bought my wife more stuff or some stuff. Maybe you don't have the money to do it at all. I wish I could have bought it for my husband or my partner or my kids or my extended family or, my friends. Hey, listen. One of the most incredible gifts that any of us could receive is just somebody's love. I did some research in this last couple of months, and I looked this up again this morning. Think about this for a minute. Christmas became heavily commercialized and money themed, primarily in the 19th century, especially from the 1820s onward. Prior to just 200 years ago, money, gifts were not the key to Christmas and feeling like you've had a successful Christmas or Christmas Eve. With markets recognizing its potential for sales, it goes on to say, leading to Santa's association with ads, the rise of gift giving as a central practice, and retailers embracing the holiday as a key sales period through some historical accounts suggest commercialism has always been present, yet it hasn't been present. It just recently became present in the last couple hundred years. In the 1820s to the 1840s, gift giving became a widespread practice, shifting focus towards presents and increased spending. A couple of you hit me with emails yesterday and this morning, numerous actually, about 30 total. And it just broke my heart about how, you're not going to have a good Christmas Eve, or you're not going to have a good Christmas because of where you're at financially. Listen to me. How about hugging a loved one? How about giving a neighbor a handshake or a hug? How about yourself? How about just sitting down right now, closing your eyes, and going through in your mind's eye on what you are thankful for? Use that as your monetary value. Believe me, from my perspective, it has far more to do with love and kindness and hope and the birth of Christ, the birth of Jesus, than it does giving out money. I can tell you all that I'm a weird guy from the standpoint that I got a little dough. And interestingly enough, I get very few gifts, very few. In fact, I have friends and family that say to me all the time, "What do you get the guy that has everything?" That doesn't mean that you don't reach out to that person anyway. If anything, just to say hi. You got friends around you that appear as though they've got it all, but I can tell you right now, a lot of people right now more than ever are empty. They're empty. They're malnourished. They need nutrients, and those nutrients are not just vitamins and minerals. The bottom line is they're spiritual and they're physical, metaphysical, quantum physics. And you need to hear from someone else. I need to hear from someone else. And that's what I would use this as, is more of an appreciation period than some monetary period where it's like, last year I was able to come up with $200 for my son or my daughter, or whatever you give, and this year I can't give anything. I want to go back to that word I used earlier, arduous, and I look at the synonyms because it talked about once more into the breach, and these troops being rallied to attack that small gap in the city wall one more time by Shakespeare's Henry V, King Henry V. And it says, to courageously re-engage with arduous undertaking, difficult, hard, heavy, laborious, burdensome, strenuous. I could tell you right now, I can't begin to tell you how many times as I was growing my businesses over the years where I got to Christmas and I didn't have that money that our traditional, conventional, wisdom and advertising, Madison Avenue's effect on us as, Pavlov's dogs being classically conditioned that you got to spend money or spend more money on these people. She got me this, I got to get her that. He got me this, I got to get him that. This type of stuff. Look, man, it does become burdensome and strenuous and backbreaking. All of these are synonyms of arduous. And just imagine what it would be like to actually physically live in that world as opposed to just mentally live in this world. Like this king did with his group where they're in battle and he's asking again, look, I know you're tired. I know you're tired. But I'm going to ask you to go once more into the breach. Once more onto the breach. I know some of you are tired. I know myself, I've been tired myself too, especially at this time of the year. And every time I ever really psychoanalyzed it, it was always around money. It was always around money. As I get older, I start to realize, having had cancer and other major things that have gone on in my life with my health, that the most important thing to me right now may not be what is the most important thing to you. But for me, it's health, and health is wealth. That's easy to say when you have some dough. It is. Let's be honest with one another. That's easy to say. But at the same time, if you're living under a bridge in Los Angeles or Portland, Oregon, or Seattle, or wherever nowadays, in a box or in an old burnout car, or an old car you've got, an RV, and your teeth are starting to go bad and your clothing is dirty, or if you're in that situation where you're just barely holding on to your home, or barely holding on to your vehicles, or barely making your insurances and these types of things, understand that the last thing on earth you should do is feel guilty because you can't come up with money to get someone else a gift. Don't feel that today on Christmas Day, whatever you do, if you happen to listen to this video today. And if you listen to it tomorrow, you can retroactively look back on today and say, you know what? I'm just going to leave it behind. It's over. You're not someone that is responsible for digging into your wallet and, pulling out your cards or your cash and getting rid of all of it, everything you've got right down to the last drop. This is not your responsibility at Christmas time, but I can tell you right now, Madison Avenue sure has us thinking this. It really does. It's actually ridiculous, quite frankly. So I just want to say peace and love and kindness in your direction, and Merry Christmas. I wanted to let you know that you need to go once more onto the breach. You need to finish the year strong. And if that means, if anything, just getting, down in paper what you're going to do next year, then get it done now. Whatever you do, don't procrastinate. Don't start developing your plan for 2026 in 2026. You should be on that right now. You've got 6 days left. And if this hasn't been the year that you wanted it to be, put it down on paper. Start to get those intentions out there. Start to get that yearning and that wanting and that vibration going, where you feel yourself calling it in. Call it in. You have a right to call it in. Don't feel guilty. Listen, one of those things I marvel at is people on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, X, whatever you want to call these things, where they say, there shouldn't be billionaires, there shouldn't be millionaires. I honestly don't think that there's ever been a multi-millionaire or a billionaire or a multi-billionaire that's ever said there shouldn't be, multi-millionaires or multi-billionaires. Listen, let's do the math for a moment. Look back on these famous men and women and understand, as an example, You wouldn't even be able to go to the bulk of the libraries throughout the rest of the world had it not been for Andrew Carnegie and his money. I mean, even the organs in the churches that most of you visit and partake in those, congregational moments, for lack of a better term, those organs, those pipes, look up Andrew Carnegie. If I recall right, when I read his biographies multiple times, it's somewhere around 200,000 churches throughout the world got their organs and their pipes from Carnegie. And that number was growing at the time when the biography was written. Where would we be without this money? Now, I know that a lot of you are out there, a lot of people anyway are out there, and their hatred towards the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts and the Morgans and, Elon Musk and Bill Gates, etc., etc., etc. Well, listen, why don't you become one of them? And why don't you do what you think they should do with the money? Don't sit there and say all this negative energy towards these people when really what it has to do is it has to do with jealousy and the fact that you're not where they're at, but you want to be where they're at. And you're using this as a reason to justify where you're at by making fun of them, by saying there shouldn't be billionaires, there shouldn't be millionaires. Look, there's always going to be people that are wealthier than you and I. That's the bottom line. Whatever the number is, it's a number. That's all it is. It's a number. It's just a number. If you want more of the number, you've got to be in a situation where you put your efforts in that area. You've got to have a goal or goals. You've got to make a plan. You've got to ask yourself a question. Do you believe in the plan? You've got to put the plan in action, and you cannot deviate from the plan. But we all deviate. So step number 6 is, when you deviate, don't beat up on yourself. Even though 4 months has gone by and you're not working towards your New Year's resolution or your goals, don't quit. Don't give up. Don't say, I'll get them next time. I'll get it next year. Just put the plan back in action. And last but not least, if you have accomplished some goals lately or a goal lately, rather than snorting cocaine and sleeping with hookers and running around on rented or purchased yachts and jets and fast cars, take some time and just have your dance thanking yourself. Don't make it monetary. As opposed to that, make it spiritual and thank yourself and get yourself used to saying thank you. Don't do these narcissistic things that create an atmosphere or an environment where what you're looking for is other people's authorization that, hey, he's really a studly guy. Look at him. He's accomplished his goal. Or she's a great person. Look at her. She's accomplished this goal. You should feel that way about yourself. And again and again and again, I can tell you, I work with people on our platform. Probably out of 210,000 plus people in the mortgage industry and this industry that I've trained, I can tell you that probably more than 50 to 60% of them struggle with this issue right here. And the issue has to do with the fact that most people don't know how to take the quality time to be thankful for what they've accomplished. And sometimes that can be what you might say, what many people might say, as minuscule as just brushing your teeth. Understand, for some people, including myself, back when I had extreme anxiety in my late teens and early to mid-20s and had my inability to be able to get out of the house, agoraphobia, that just taking care of my personal health each day and eating and staying alive was an arduous task. And that word arduous, again, synonyms: difficult, hard, heavy, laborious, burdensome, strenuous. You know, if you're at that point where life is strenuous for you right now, heavy, hard, difficult, what you gotta do is you gotta be proactive, because you can't be reactive. If you're reactive, look the difference up between proaction and reaction, and understand you have to live a proactive life. At the end of the day, that's where the results are at. It can't be reactive. Very few people I've met can just set traps and make a living, metaphorically speaking. You got to go out and you got to check the traps once you set the traps, once you made a trap line. So there's maintenance involved in trapping beaver. There's maintenance involved in trapping business owners. You know, so often I get people say to me, you know, gosh, how many Craigslist do I have to do, or how many black envelopes do I have to send? I mean, you know, folks, how many telemarketing calls do I have to make? I've made 15, I've made 50, I've made 100. You know, I've been doing this stuff since the mid-'80s. I'm 64 years old. It's 2025. I mean, we're talking 40 years. And I don't look at it as heavy or hard or difficult or taxing, not because I've got some dough, but because what I've got is principles that I've put in place that are foundational. Like a home or a building, I've got a foundation built out of concrete. And I've put my boards up, my walls, as you drive by a subdivision. I've got my boards up. I've got my roof on. I put my sheeting on. Interiorly, I put on my sheetrock. And, you know, I put in my orange peel, and I've painted it, and I've put in the carpet. And, you know, more and more what I realize is that so few of us really understand how powerful we are. And I can tell you right now, one of the greatest gifts you can give this time of year is to these business owners, because they are at home right now and they too are not able to get the gifts they wanted for their kids, for their wives, for their husband, for their partner, you know, for their mother, for their father, for their grandparents, you know, for their employees. I mean, many's the time I've had lenders right at this time at the end of the year grab money so they can pay out their annual bonuses, because they didn't have that money sitting around for annual bonuses. Taxes are due. It's the end of the year, first of the year. These things arise. And this is a dark period for a lot of people in America, maybe for you. So the best thing you can do, the best thing most people could do, is just take some time out, just sit down, be calm, and appreciate the things you have that have gone on in your life. Not that you've bought, not that you've purchased, but the things that have gone on in your life. Maybe like me, when I was in my late teens and early to mid 20s, just having made it another day was a victory for me, as I would kneel in prayer and thank God. And then I could get in bed and have that silence, because I just didn't have the knack. I didn't have the skills to be able to shut off the thinking in my brain. It just didn't stop. My brain was like a freight train rolling down the track, like a Japanese train, commuter train, 300 miles an hour. You know, Deepak Chopra says that you and I have on average 50,000 thoughts a day. Well, if that's the average, I think at the time I was having 5 or 10 or 15 times that. You know, 250,000 to 1 million thoughts a day. And I couldn't get them to stop. And I'll tell you, one of the number one reasons why I couldn't get them to stop was I was just sitting there trying to figure out how to get them to stop. as opposed to getting up. And very similar, by the way, without thinking about it, this comes into play. Once more into the breach, once more onto the breach, once more trying to attack that gap in the city wall. Go out and mow your lawn, go out and clean your gutters, go out and clean up your car, cut your fingernails, cut your toenails, personal hygiene, brush your teeth, these things that are foundational things that will get you through the day, that will make you feel better. I mean, there's nothing worse than looking like Snaggletooth because you haven't brushed your teeth, or you look at your fingernails and they're full of dirt. My old man used to say all the time when we were kids, he's like, it's Sunday and it's time for us to clean out the toe jam. And we would giggle as little kids. But if you've ever dug in there in that black stuff in the sides of your toes and smelled that stuff, oh my God, the stench, And then afterwards you're done, you get your toenails done, you get your fingernails done, and there's that sense of cleanliness is next to godliness. So, if you don't have the money right now, do something different. Write your wife a note, write your husband a note, write your partner a note, write your kids a note, and it will become a heartfelt note. And it'll be something that they didn't receive from everybody else, that they did receive from you, that didn't have to do with this 1820s, this last 200 years where Christmas became more of a monetized monetary value. What have you got to give me? What gifts have you come bearing that you paid tremendous amounts of money for? Why didn't you get me a motorcycle? Why didn't you get me a car or a truck? How come you didn't get me a diamond ring? Why didn't you get me those running shoes for $190? Those Pegasus running shoes for $190 from Nike? What's your problem? Well, hey, listen, the problem is a tremendous amount of us don't have much of this. We just don't. There's nothing wrong with that. Unless, of course, you feel there's something wrong with that. And then it becomes a question of what are you doing about it? What are you doing about it? So dig in. And again, once more into the breach. Fight the fight. Metaphorically used to encourage you and I to face ongoing problems, tough meetings, daunting tasks with renewed vigor. Get yourself ready. Do some push-ups. Do some sit-ups. Go out. Do some walking. Get on the treadmill. Get proactive. And watch what happens. It's amazing how you change your mindset and you change your actions. And the next thing you know, things start to happen that create an ambiance where endorphins and dopamine is released. And you and I say to ourselves, I'm proud of myself. So if you're not feeling proud of yourself right now, because it's a tough year for you financially speaking, and you weren't able to come through for others, quote unquote, at Christmas time, don't get bogged down by that crap. It's just made up. What's most important is to reach out to them, let them know that you love them. Anyway, I love all of you, love and kindness in your direction. I hope that the year finishes strong for you. I wish you nothing but the best at this time of the year. And if for some reason you're focused on things that are getting you down, remove your focus and put your focus on things that get you up. Have a wonderful end of the year. Have a Merry, Merry Christmas today. And I look forward to seeing you and talking to each of you in class going forward. Bye-bye now.